Welcome. It's about 1 o'clock now, and I'm going to wait like another minute and then I'm going to begin. But thank you all for being here so much. We have a fun presentation for you. I think you'll like it. And part of the reason we have such a fun presentation is because we have a special guest today whom I'll introduce in a moment. But first of all, I am Megan Isidore. I'm the Executive Director of River Otter Ecology Project and the co-founder. And I'm here supported wonderfully by my co-founder, Terrence Carroll, who's also our research director. And he is in the background making sure all goes well. And Madison, will you pop in? I have a very exciting guest today who we had at our beaver presentation. This is Madison Ford, a naturalist and photographer who's been just so helpful in teaching me about the river and the animals in the river and where they are. And she's joining us today with some of her great photos.
Fun. Glad to be back on here. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. And Madison is going to disappear for a few minutes while I talk, but she'll be back. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Lunch and Learn Verde River Otters. Today is World Otter Day, which is held on May 27th, on the last Wednesday in May every year. And we hold it to raise awareness for the conservation of otters throughout the world. Every otter organization is holding events today to help people connect to otters and their habitats. And I'm going to talk about Verde Rivers, Otters for Waters program, and what you've helped us discover with your river otter sightings. And then we're going to move on to a little bit of natural history, of course, because it's me and I always talk otter natural history. And we're going to talk about some of the very cool adaptations that these semi-aquatic mammals use to thrive in the Verde River and other places. And of course, we'll remind you how and where to find river otters in the Verde watershed. So, otters come in species, and there are 14 species worldwide. North American river otters have had up to 7 subspecies in the United States, including the Sonoran River otter, which historically inhabited Arizona's rivers. But extensive fur trapping and habitat loss led to that subspecies extinction by the 1960s, though we are not entirely and 100% sure that they were completely lost. The Arizona Game and Fish Department led a reintroduction effort from 1981 to 83, and they released 46 otters from Louisiana into the Verde River drainage. Oops. The effort was successful, and a self-sustaining population now exists in the Verde River. Otters have since established themselves in tributaries, including Oak Creek, Sycamore Canyon, and Clear Creek, although they continue, of course, to face threats from habitat degradation and stream diversion for irrigation and flood control. Those 46 animals apparently did well enough to provide a robust recovering population. A couple of years ago, we partnered with Friends of the Verde to find the otters, and today we're offering an update on what we found, plus some more otter lore. Now, why otters? Otters are an indicator species, meaning that they tell us something about the waterways that they inhabit. And what they generally tell us, if they're there and thriving as they are in the Verde, that the waterways are reasonably healthy. There's enough good prey species for the otters to eat. There's enough habitat for them to bring up their young in. Also, river otters are a recovering species in Arizona, so we're very interested in how they're doing and whether they continue to thrive. They're an urban wildlands connector, which we don't see so much in the Verde River Valley because it's not very urban, but they do exist all the way down to Phoenix. So, and we have found in the San Francisco Bay Area that River otters don't care about cities. They're perfectly happy to live in densely populated areas as long as the water is reasonably clean and healthy. Finally, or second to finally, they're predators and they can affect other species. So when you're doing restoration projects that have to do with endangered species, you really want to know if there's a predator in the area. Finally, they're charismatic. They are charm bombs. They really help us to connect people to protection of our shared watersheds. So, off to what we've discovered since we started this project 2.5 years ago. We wanted to, some of our study questions are, do they thrive throughout the Verde or in pockets? What do they eat? Are they bearing healthy young? Are they getting struck by vehicles? What habitats do they use most and for what? So the map is what we've found. Look at the map on the left. All those yellow and green dots all those yellow dots are verified otter sightings, meaning that those sightings came in with a photo or with a video. The green and blue dots should all be blue dots, but we had a little computer glitch. So the green and blue dots are sightings which are not verified, meaning someone saw them and reported them, and we're reasonably sure it's a river otter, but we can't always be entirely sure. So we mark them, but we have a little differentiation in the markings. And the photo on the right is just such a beautiful photo by Marianne Johnson. She's one of our otter spotters in the Verde. And just, I love to showcase otter spotters photos because they're beautiful and they're exciting and they tell us a lot about the waterways. So as you see it back to the map, we've had sightings all the way from north of Prescott all the way down to almost to Phoenix. So lots of otter sightings all up and down the Verde River. There are some gaps in there, and we'd like to fill those gaps. And we will in time because we have your help, for which we are extremely grateful. And I want to tell you about the people who send in otter spotter reports. Almost 100% describe themselves as naturalists or outdoor enthusiasts. You know, they're us. It's people like you and me who are out there. We have a few biologists, a couple of wildlife photographers, one family going on a hike. I love that observation, and one student. But on the whole, it's just us. We're out there, we're seeing things, we are reporting them. So this is, I promise this is my only chart sciencey data slide. But it's interesting, observation patterns. Almost all of them were seen in rivers and streams, a few in lakes and ponds, which you would expect. The other and the both categories are usually either backyards or docks or in some places ponds where ducklings hang out, places like that. But most of them are found in rivers and streams. Otters seen per a report, usually it's one, sometimes two. Only very seldom do we see seven at once. And that was about a year ago, and it was in the Dead Horse State Ranch area that seven otters were seen together. Very exciting. But by far the most common is seeing one otter. And what time of day are they seen? That really doesn't vary. And it is 6 to 8 or 9 in the morning, and then in the evening from 6 to 7. And that's kind of typical because those are the times when a lot of bird watchers are out, a lot of fishermen are out, and the otters are also out doing the same thing, but for different reasons. They're definitely fishing, just like fishermen do, but they're also bird watching, although not just to see the birds, but they're hoping they can also eat them. So the one thing that we haven't found on our through our investigations in the Verde is baby otters, like these little tiny ones learning to hunt with their mom. There's their mom bringing fish up. They're grabbing fish out of her mouth because actually they're not buoyant. They're too little to swim underwater and grab those fish. They have to gain a little bit of weight to allow themselves to go under. But meanwhile, their mom is doing the hard work of taking care of their food needs. So I'm showing this video now because I really want you to look out for otters in Arizona, for baby otters in the Verde River watershed. We've never had photos or videos of babies when they first start coming out with their mom when they're little like this. So if you happen to see them, do your very best to get a photo and put in an observation. Now, this next video is a bit of a change of topic, and you can all participate. So I'm going to talk about four kinds of physical adaptations that help river otters thrive. And as you watch a video, if you would put in the chat what you think their bodies do to help them thrive in waters like this, how their form and their follows the functions that it holds. Let me get this going. There we go. So we have these are a couple of otters at San Francisco Zoo, and we were lucky enough to get permission to take some underwater video. So look at them, look at how they swim, how they move, what they're doing, and try to think and drop in the chat what kinds of adaptations they have, what allows them to be such good swimmers and hunters underwater. And there are really no wrong answers to this because it's all about observation. River otter natural history and all wildlife natural history is learned through close observation. And we don't often get to see rivers otters under the water. Someone put in webbed feet. John, thank you. That's right. What else are they doing? These are mammals hunting under the water. What else do you observe? Oh, Stacy, what a great comment. A body similar to a dachshund. Does that body type allow better digging and diving? We'll talk about how they swim. It certainly does. Specialized fur, that's right. Body shape, yes. You guys are good. Tail for piloting, excellent. They're pudgy. Jim Carroll, yes, they are pudgy. And these are zoo otters, so they're even more pudgy. But river otters tend to be, they don't actually carry much fat on their bodies. A lot of that is muscle, and they're sleek and they eat a lot. They tend to fit 15 to 17% of their body weight every day, which is a lot. And you see how fast they are in the water, too. Check that out. So this otter did what a lot of otters do when they catch something, when they catch small fish, they just eat them right in the water. But when they catch a bigger fish like this one, they pull it up onto the bank to eat it because it's easier for them and they can get more of it. Ah! On the one hand, I love that otters are getting plenty to eat. On the other, I really feel for the fish because we know the fish want to survive too, but it's an otter eat fish world, I'm afraid. So, a lot of you brought up all of the things that I'm going to talk about right now. And the first is that tail. That is a long, sleek, and strong, strong tail. And what it works to do is it's a propeller and it helps them balance when they're doing hard jobs like this of carrying a ray across a really uneven ground. Look at those big, thick tails that help them balance as they go along. I love this video. It's really quite astonishing. That's such a big ray. Then this one, the other thing their tails do is help them balance as they're climbing cliffs like this one. You see the mom otter helping her little one up that steep cliff with the helper female behind, trying to make sure that that even smaller one is able to make it up. River otters climb cliffs with great regularity, and they sometimes sadly fall off the cliffs, but thankfully not too often. But we have found a baby otter carcass at the base of a cliff Very upsetting. So the webbed feet, I think a couple of you mentioned webbed feet. Yep, they sure do have those webbed feet. And what are the webbed feet for? You guys know what they're for. I know you do. Why would you have webs on your feet? Why do people use fins when they swim? Exactly. Moving water. Those webbed feet help propel them through the water. And they're all four of their feet are webbed. And you'll see when we get to the track section how that shows up on sand and how you can track otters or how you can tell the difference between otter feet and raccoon feet, which sometimes look kind of similar. So the other thing I'm showing you on this slide is a back otter foot. You can see that well, you can't really see the webs, but you can see they have very strong claws and they have those round protuberances on the pad. Those are actually scent glands and they're there to help the otters put out information about what's going on in their bodies and in their social situations. So when you see otters pooping, if their back feet are often going up and down, we call it the scat dance. And that's to spread that scent around. So I want to talk about their amazing fur. Their fur coat, or it's also called a pelage, of river otters provides its main means of insulation. And think about this. These are warm-blooded animals that hunt and fish and travel in cold water quite a lot, and not just in the summer, but in freezing places like Alaska in the winter as well. Body fat in river otters is only distributed in areas that need additional protection, like the tail. And we just saw those thick tails with lots of fur. And it has a big surface area, so it has extra fur on it to keep those tails from losing body heat. Um, River otters have the second thickest fur of any animal on the planet. Only sea otters have more. Their fur is twice as dense per square centimeter as river otters. And that thick coat is why river otters were hunted to extirpation or close to extinction in a lot of parts of the country. Now, the fur itself has two layers. Check out the fur construction in the photo on the right. The hairs are shaped to interlock. The wedge-shaped fins fit into wedge-shaped grooves between the fins of adjacent hairs, which is a complicated way of saying that the hairs form a web. And that web keeps water from ever reaching the otter's skin. So they're basically wearing a dry suit here. Those same grooves trap air bubbles, which add another layer of thermal insulation. And the underhairs, the thick layer of underhairs, are also coated with a thin layer of body oil from the otter's sebaceous or oily glands. And that's one more barrier against the water. So they are able to swim around in very cold water and stay dry. Really important. Here are some wintertime otters staying warm and cozy despite it being cold and them sitting in really cold water. And here's why all of that matters. Fur is 20 to 50 times greater conductor of heat when it's wet than when it's dry. So maintaining those trapped air pockets is really critical. And that's why they groom all the time, because otters groom constantly, both themselves and each other. And their grooming keeps that fur in good shape to trap those air bubbles and keep them warm and dry. Oh, excuse me. So why don't they have blubber like most marine mammals? Marine mammals who live in the oceans, especially, have thick layers of blubber. Seals, elephant seals, and other marine mammals have lots and lots of blubber. But river otters do not. It's actually a more efficient insulator against cold than fur. But for a river otter, it would cause problems because blubber has a low specific weight, which is a way of talking about the density of the fur and the weight per density. And it would really create buoyancy issues on such a small animal. You can see you saw with those little otters in the beginning of the show that they can't really go underwater. They bob on top. They're very buoyant because they don't have enough weight to carry them under the water. So added blubber weight would uh, would create buoyancy issues on those little river otters. And also, when they're on the land, that added blubber would make them too heavy to really be able to get around very well. So fur, a thick layer of fur like they have, solves that insulation problem without the downsides. So they do have a little bit of body fat, but usually not too much. These otters look very fat, but actually more of that is fur, although they do have some fat, but their fat is especially on their tails because they have so much tail. Uh, uh, what is the word I'm looking for? They have so much area on their tails. So the whole system come, oops. The whole system comes together down to four things that work together to keep river otters warm. There's two layers of fur. There's an interlocking hair structure that traps air, sebaceous oil. They have constant grooming to keep everything in good shape. And so in the end, it's not too much fat, lots of fur, and fur that's meant to stay dry underwater. Any questions so far before I move on? Okay. We are going to go on, if I can get my computer to go. We are going to go on and talk about one of my favorite parts of river otters to both to look at and to understand more about, and that's their vibrissae. Those are whiskers. Both of them more or less see underwater. They're one of the most important sensory organs that river otters have. They're whiskers. They have a lot of them, as you can see here. They have them on the eyebrows, across the muzzle, under the chin, by the ears, um, and on the throat too. Different locations serve different purposes for the otters. The muzzle and chin whiskers are critical for foraging and for catching prey. When they are in dark, murky waters looking for prey, those whiskers can pick up vibrations in the water and they can hunt prey that way. The ones above the eyes and on the cheeks, you can see they're kind of thick. They have both thick and thin ones, and the ones above the eyes and on the cheeks help them in dark areas avoid hitting things or bumping into things and help them to move through places that are dark. So North American river otters rely on their faces and especially those facial vibrissae more than their paws to locate food. Manual dexterity is pretty refined in river otters, but it's not the primary tool the way it is in sea otters. Sea otters have astonishing amounts of nerve endings on their paws that allow them to find food with great precision and accuracy in deep water. River otters don't have that. But they do have the wonderful vibrissae that help them go. And here's another really interesting thing about river otter perception. They can actually smell underwater, and this is fairly recent research. It's super interesting. They do it by exhaling a little bubble of air through their nostrils, just a small bubble, tiny before fully closing their nostrils. Because remember, both their ears and their nostrils can close as they dive. Think of it as blowing a little tiny air pocket into the water. And the bubble doesn't just float away, it captures scent molecules from the surrounding water. Basically, it collects a little packet of chemical information. So cool. I love this. And then the otter quickly inhales that bubble back into its nasal cavity away from the water and analyzes it through its brain using its uh, uh, olfactory receptors, and that's the same way that it smells on land. And then they cycle through this exhale, inhale about 10 times a second. So they're sampling that water while they're underwater. So when an otter is hunting in murky water, it's doing two things at once. It's feeling for movement with those sensitive vibrissae and chasing it, and essentially also smelling its way toward prey. I recently heard that in Florida, river otters are being trained as underwater search and rescue animals and have been deployed in the same way as search and rescue dogs on land. It's fascinating and amazing. And now we're going to invite Madison back because we're going to talk about something that she's very good at in the Verde, and that is finding otters. Thanks, Madison. I'm going to start by mentioning that people who see otters hang around where otters are. And otters hang around where fish and crayfish are. And a lot of times that is associated with beaver ponds. Madison, tell us about this beaver pond.
So this spot on the Verde River, you can see here all of these sticks that are missing their bark and quite chewed up with the speared ends on there. So this is was an indication that beavers were hanging out right here eating. And all around this area, you'll still see the slides that Megan will talk about next, of the otters entering and exiting the water right here. And so it's really fun when you see those slide marks to try to hang out there for as long as you can. And usually an otter will come by and say hello.
And that is so cool. I wish they did say hello instead of looking suspiciously at us. So, beaver ponds are really interesting to hang out in anyway because so much wildlife shows up at beaver ponds. And that happens because beavers are the most wonderful engineers and build these dams that allow ponds to grow up. It invites more fish in, more more and that invites more birds in, and all kinds of critters come down to these nice ponds that the beavers make for us. And that's why the beavers always get a big red heart. Thank you, beavers. And as most of, or some of you may know, we also have a beaver seeker program through Friends of the Verde River, and we are looking for the beavers. So if you find beavers, then I hope, Terrence, you'll put in the beaver QR code so that people can put in their sightings of beavers as well. But if you do it wrong and you put a beaver sighting into the otter sighting portal, don't worry because we can move it over for you. Next, we're moving on to a kind of a less attractive product, but extremely important, especially when you're looking for otters. A lot of times, you can find otters through their scat. And Madison, can you come back in and tell us about this wonderful photo that's kind of gross looking, but it's so interesting?
Yes, absolutely. So this top photo in the middle here, we just saw last weekend. So a large area on the side of the river where there was some slides leading into the water. And so this dried scat was on top, and you can see the left scat is a little bit darker in color. That indicated it was a little fresher. And it was very smelly, very fishy smelling in this area. And you could see the crawfish remains in the scat, which was really fun. And yeah.
Thank you. So Madison, don't go away. We need you. Come back here.
I'm
You
here.
you should just stay. But I
Okay.
do want to talk a little bit about this white. piece of something that's in that otter scat in the central photo, that is a little bit of crayfish remains. And why is it round and white? It's you often find this in otter scat because they eat crayfish, and then this comes out with the remains. It's a calcium deposit, and that calcium deposit happens in crayfish because as they eat their fish bones and their fish scales and everything else that crayfish eat, they secrete calcium in their head basically, because they're going to need that when they molt and their shells come off and they need to build more shells. They take from that calcium to build their new shells. And if that is not cool, I don't know what is. So the other thing that Madison found in this photo is both old and new scat. The new scat is like the scat on the left. It's dark and it's oily. And as it gets older, it gets more and more white and crumbly, like the scat on the right. So was that a latrine site, Madison?
It was, yes. There was at least 15 to 20 different piles right in that area.
So cool.
And
So
as you
if you
mentioned, when you find a latrine site, if you hang out long enough, they're definitely going to come back. So while we were investigating the area, an otter did swim right by, and I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm in your restroom."
So funny. And that is where we often put our trail cameras. We have 15 or 20 trail cameras that we put out every year to monitor otters in part of Point Reyes National Seashore. And we as often as we can, we put those trail cameras right on latrine sites because that's where the otters come. So we get to see a lot of them. But to move on, the photo in the top left, which is very gross looking, is not diarrhea. It is a secretion from otter intestines that helps to guard them from fish bones and shells that might hurt them otherwise. But that does come out with poop sometimes or sometimes separately. The photo on the bottom left has a bunch of feathers in it because otters love to eat water birds when they can get them, and they do it with great relish. Um, the photo on the top right, you can see all the bones and scales that are in otter poop. It's really interesting sometimes to tear that apart. And and you did that recently, didn't you?
Yes, very fishy smelling.
Very very fishy smelling, exactly. And the one on the bottom right is just a much older scat that has turned white. So otter tracks. Do you see many otter tracks, Madison, on the banks?
I haven't, yeah.
Yeah,
Seems a little more difficult to spot those.
I think it is. It's much easier to find them in sand, where we often track otters, and these prints are really typical of otters in sand. They have the five pointy toes. They have the webs between the feet that cause that cause only the tips of the toes to show. Sometimes people mistake raccoon tracks for otter tracks, and a good way to know which is what that you're looking at is to figure out whether those tracks go, whether the indentations go all the way down to where the toes join the paw or whether they're webbed like this so that the indentations don't show all the way. And also on the right, you see lots of rough tail drags. When otters are rolling around on the sand, which they love to do, they will drag their tails. And sometimes even when they're walking slowly, they'll let their tails drag a little. So tail drags are a good way to look. But I think along the Verde, from what I noticed when I was there too, I didn't see a single otter track, even though I knew there were otters around. I think it's a different substrate and harder to track them. But that doesn't mean they're not there. And if you see them, we want photos for sure. Tell us about these beautiful spots. I'm so in love with the Verde now.
Yeah, this is the photo on the left is from one of the latrine sites. So the otter was just cruising along the river just on the other side. So we could see it hiding under the bushes over there. And it looked like it was scampering around for the crayfish. So that was pretty cool to see. And then the photo on the right is one of the grasses that grows on the Verde River. And I'll need someone, hopefully, someone in the comments can say if they know what type of grass this is. But we see a lot of the den sites and otters coming out from underneath those. So those are really cool to look out for and listen to see if you can hear any rustling in the bushes.
Do you see them a lot in the willows?
Yeah, especially, you know, the beaver marks are all over the willows. So, I mean, I'll see the otters nearby, especially if there's a slide there. But
Hmm.
yeah, if anyone in the comments knows what type of grass this is, and I'll have to look that up later too.
I can find out from our from the Verde folks, but I don't know what kind of grass it is either. All right. So um this is along a creek and wetland in my neck of the woods at near Point Reyes National Seashore, where I found lots of otter sign. And we found this just by walking along the edge of the creek and using our noses truthfully, especially earlier in the summer or when the scat is still pretty fresh. You can really smell it. And we smelled it and we walked along and we found this rolling spot, which is very typical of river otters. They'll roll around, they'll leave a little bit of scat here and there, and then they'll slide back into the water. And the photo below is that same spot as above, but you can see the otter slide. And it's later in the season, so the slide is more apparent because the grasses have grown back and the reeds have grown back. On the right, you can see another otter slide. And otter slides are really different from beaver slides. How would you say that, Madison? What do you see out there?
I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. It seems, especially, you know, I'm not sure the difference because they're both wet and they both seem to go straight in. Some of the angles, it's like a plop almost, which is interesting. I always picture them sliding in there.
Yes, I do too, and I've heard them plop in many times. But what I noticed is, and probably otters use the beaver slides as well out there, but when I'm looking, I can see that the otter slides where I live are very narrow, and the beaver slides are much bigger because beavers are so big. So hefty critters. But they can all, I don't know if when beavers go into the water, do they plop as well? I don't think I've heard that.
I have heard that.
So cool. And that must be a mighty plop.
Yes, it is quite loud.
All right. And these are two of Madison's as well.
Yeah, on
There's
the
that.
left, you'll see that slide mark into the water, so a clear indentation of exiting and entering. And on the right, you can see if you close in on the right, you'll see the white scat remains a little bit dry, but clearly a site where they visit a lot.
Yep. And now river otters do kind of blend in. It's true, or they can. They don't always. But it helps to look for signs of otters or go to a place where you think otters might be, or any wildlife. This works for all wildlife and all places. Plant yourself. Bring a book, bring binoculars, bring a sketch pad if you're an artist, and wait. Just sit there quietly and wait, and you will see somebody come along sooner or later. And this time, it's an otter that just blended in so well until you saw him moving. This is a wonderful observation. And oops, sorry about that. I just had to put this other photo in again by Marianne because it's beautiful and she's such a good photographer. I really love these photos. Um, hmm. Another thing you can look for is, what are we seeing here? Ripples. If you see big ripples on the water, it could be a big fish, but it could also be a river otter or a beaver or another aquatic animal. Very fun to look at. 'Cause. 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 'C Let's hear. This is a really interesting photo. Let's hear about it.
Yes, so we were lucky enough to see an otter heading upstream, actually, and it was making its way, swimming, hunting, fishing along the way. And then we had this amazing shot with a great blue heron in the background, and it seemed like they were just neighbors carrying on, both fishing, which was really fun to watch. And the otter's actually eating a fish right here. You can see its teeth sticking out, which was fun. I wish the heron was a little more in focus, but it was a really cool moment.
It's a wonderful photo, and it gives us a bunch of information about who's neighbors with who and what they're doing and how that's working together. We often see great blue herons and other large birds like egrets hunting in the same areas as river otters, and that's because they're looking for the same thing, and that's little fish. And the otters don't often capture herons and egrets. It's been known to happen, but it doesn't usually happen. And I've just noticed the herons and the egrets will follow the otters at close range because they're both pulling up fish from the shallows, but they keep a wary eye on those otters and they fly off if they think they're going to get attacked. Otters would happily take a great blue heron if they could. Another beautiful otter by Marianne Johnson. I love this one because you can see all those whiskers we were talking about. And you can see that thick fur and the bubbles, and it's just an excellent photo. Now, this one is really interesting to me. Sometimes, like on the left, you catch a glimpse of an otter, and Eve Fisher did a great job here. She saw what she thought was an otter and quickly took a photo of it for the observation to put into our otter spotter observation. But then she just hung out and waited. And take a look at this. Looks like there's nothing there, but oh, there they are. So that really works well. If you're looking for wildlife and you see something and you snap a quick picture and then you just sit and wait quietly, then you're likely to see something else, whether it's an otter or a muskrat or something else of great interest. Tell us about this one.
Yes, you can see the fish in the mouth. And for these larger fish, as Megan mentioned, we watched the otter take it offshore to enjoy it versus the smaller fish, it seemed to just swallow it right above the water. So this was a fun encounter to actually see the fish and the otter take its meal.
It's really cool. Does anybody know what kind of fish that is? To me, it looks a little like a carp. Maybe it's a carp. Otters are love carp because they're slow moving and easy to catch. But I'm not sure. If there's anyone there who knows what fish this is, please drop it in the chat for us. And the more photos we get of otters with prey, the happier we are because it helps us understand what they're eating in the Verde, without doing all the work to collect scat and do scat ID. Also fun, but all right, now this one, otters are spend a lot of time hunting for food, and they don't spend nearly as much time doing what they're doing here, which is mating. And you can tell that they're mating for in a couple of ways. One, the male otter has a firm grasp of the female by the back of the neck, which is typical in river otter mating. They mate in the water and then they spend a couple of days sometimes going in and out of the water and mating, then resting, then mating, then resting. The other way you can tell is this was in February, and that would be an appropriate month for river otters to mate in Arizona. So super interesting. And you can see, is that his tail back there? I guess. Do you think, Madison?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
Maybe the water is making it look a little longer.
Yeah. It's an interesting angle, but that's a really good mating photograph. And again, if any of you see river otters mating, if you possibly can, please do take a photo of it. And these are just various videos, and I'm showing as many as I can of our otter spotter videos and photos from the Verde because it's really wonderful that that you all have jumped on this and have taken videos and photos and put them in. This one shows it can be really hard to see a river otter in a fast moving or even a slowly moving river. They have very tiny heads and they swim along with their legs underneath them. And you can just see their heads peeking out of the water. Their heads are about the same size as a pelican head without the beak, if that makes any sense to you. But they're small. Their little heads are little. They're like this big. This next one, I love this one because you can tell it's an otter just by the way it's moving through the water. Really smooth, gliding, using that big strong tail to propel it. They have really strong backbones and musculature along their backbones that helps them to propel them like this through the water. And in the end, you'll see what really can tell you for sure it's an otter. Don't blink, it's quick. There. See, did you see that? Fun. Now, this next one is where people often see river otters in their koi ponds or in their duck ponds because absolutely those otters are going to go after any food that they can get. And it's really hard for homeowners who have koi that they love dearly. My sister has koi and she loves them. And if an otter came and ate her koi, she would be so, so sad. But they do take animals if they can get them. And once otters think, oops, let me stop this one. Once otters think that there's wildlife somewhere or animals somewhere they can prey upon, they don't really give up very easily. If you are having issues with river otters in your ponds or anything, you can get in touch with me and I'll try to help you, but it is pretty hard. And usually the best thing to do is to pull the prey species out for a little while until the otters give up. It's a tough one for sure. Oh, there we go. These photos by DJ Craig are just fun. Madison, how would you interpret these two on the left?
Yeah, the two and then the three on the bottom is so fun. I wonder what was going on here.
I'm curious too. It seems like they may be siblings playing. That's what it seems to me the most like. And then on the right, Chuck just sent us this wonderful pair of photos of river otters being very curious about humans because they are. They're a very curious critter. And here they are just uh,
That's
going
usually how I
along.
see them as well. And they have that more curious aspect, as you mentioned, versus beavers. Beavers are more firm and confident, I'd say. And the otters are curious and want to know what you're doing and will usually stick out of the water to get a closer look.
Yeah. I love that. One of my favorite otter encounters was hanging out on a bank. At one point, I was fiddling with our trail camera, and four otters came right up to the bank. They were so curious because I was basically sitting in their latrine site. Well, because that's where I had the camera. And they swam up and they came up onto the bank, and I had to back off. And I was really afraid they would poop on my backpack, but thankfully they did not. That would have been
That's
awful.
amazing.
Yeah, it was great. I have video of it somewhere. Um, but the photo on the right is one that I want to remind everybody about because it is cold. When we're talking about winter otters, they need to fish and they need to hunt all winter, even when it's icy. And winter can be really, really tough on otters, and that's why they need those thick coats to keep them warm and allow them to hunt even under ice and snow. Now, this one, I'm really curious about this because I don't know what those otters are sitting on or where it is, but it looks icy to me. Does anyone know where this is? If you do, please drop it into the chat. Um, because I haven't been able to find anyone who knows where this is. But in any case, otters will investigate and use anything man-made that they can, that's for sure. These are just for some photos to show you that we love all the photos we get. And there's an otter on a tree. Otters are really good at climbing trees. Actually, people who look after otters in zoos have to make sure the trees are trimmed back because the otters will climb them and escape and go walkabout. So photos of otters climbing trees are great for us. I love this one. The middle one looks like an otter on possibly a beaver construction. Do you think, Madison? Do you know where that is?
The middle one, it looks like it's in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure where it is, but these are all wonderful photos by our otter spotters. And then this one, I love otters go everywhere. They love docks. This is a young otter on a dock, and they often leave little gifts on the docks for the homeowners. And there's nothing you can really do about it. I have people sometimes saying, how can I keep otters off my boat or off my dock? It's very hard to do. Mostly you have to use your hose and hose off that stinky scat that they leave behind. So I'm going to let you go in a few minutes. Oh my goodness, I've overstayed my time. I just want to tell you and thank you for being here and tell you to help protect your local waters. That's what we do, and that is our responsibility and our honor to do that for our waterways. How can you do it? Lots of ways. Call your policymakers. Let them know that you care. Whether they agree with you or don't agree with you, they are counting those calls and they are paying attention to what you want. Join conservation groups like Friends of the Verde. Donate, of course, we always need more funding. Don't give up. Do not give up on the planet. Madison and I were just talking about in what bad shape the planet is right now and how important it is for us to keep working. We're not going to change anything unless we keep working. Become a steward, become a waterway steward in whatever way you enjoy the most about it, whether it's photography or art or calling your legislators, but bring your friends along with you. It's so much more fun to do it as a group than on your own. And I know you do that, Madison. I know you're always out there with your
Absolutely.
partner. Yeah. And input your otter sightings, and I'm going to show you how right now quickly. I've showed these two photos because they're not very good as far as beautiful wildlife photos go, but for us, they're golden because we can tell that is an otter, that's a sighting. And the second one is really hard to tell. I'm pretty sure it's an otter, but there's that big white patch. It's confusing on the back of it. I think it's just a reflection, but I think we're counting that as an otter. We do a lot of talking about the photos that come in and the observations to figure out whether they are actually otters or not. You can input your observation easily using this QR code, or you can go on the Verde River website and put it and stick that in there and fill it out. I'm going to leave you with this photo of a couple of babies playing on a rock. And this is up here. This is in Golden Gate National Recreation Area. But it's such a cute photo. And you know their mother is nearby.
So playful.
So cute. And there's Mama. And those baby otters know they're perfectly safe with their mom. Nothing bad is going to happen to them. Thank you all for being here, and I'm going to stay a couple of minutes